Igcse environmental management class, and we'll be looking at the part 2 aspect of agriculture and its environment. And in this video, we'll be looking at agricultural types. That's syllabus content 3.3. We'll also look at increasing agricultural yield and impact of agriculture. So based on the syllabus content, agricultural types, increasing agricultural yield and impact of agriculture are the concept and content we are going to cover in this lesson. So you can actually pause and go through it individually. So quickly, agricultural types. Now, agriculture are classified based on what product they farm. And based on what product they farm, we have arable farming, which has to do with growing crops, pastoral farming, which has to do with rearing of livestock, that's animals, and mixed farming have to do with rearing livestock and growing crops on the same farm. So when you rear livestock and grow crops on the same farm, that's mixed farming. While agricultural types can also be classified based on why they are farming. Now, based on why they are farming, we have commercial farming that has to do with to produce is grown and slash rare and to sell for profit. That's when you have to do with cash crop to sell for profit. While in subsistence farming, produce is grown and rare mainly for farmers and their family to consume. So that's the major types of agriculture. Now we'll go into 3.4 that has to do with techniques used to increase agricultural yield. Now those techniques we're going to look at is to describe the different techniques. So we need to, the techniques used to increase agricultural yield has to do with crop rotation, fertilizers, irrigation, insect control that has to do with insecticide and herbicides, and also fungicides. Then mechanization, selective breeding of animals and plants, genetic modified organisms, and we also look at control environment like the greenhouse and hydroponics. Now these are the methods used to increase agricultural yield. So if you are just asked state methods used to increase agricultural yield, this is all you need to write down. But however, let's describe them individually. Now, crop rotation. The principle of growing different types of crop in different plot of land. That is what crop rotation is. Now, you can design it in this format where legumes have nitrogen fixing bacteria in their root nodules. You can cultivate that first. Then after that, you can now cultivate leafy crops such as vegetables that are required for their leaves. It's required a lot of nitrogen left by the legumes. Then you can now cultivate root crops which have deep root and system. Then you can follow that the land is plowed but left barren for a period to restore soil fertility and to avoid surplus production. So these are things you can do on a single plot and to rotate it in order for you to maintain the soil fertility and improve the crop production in the long run. So advantages of crop rotation: diseases in the soil affecting the plant are left behind. Now pests need to find a new site, therefore their production is reduced. The soil in the new plot is likely to have the essential nutrient. Then crops ready to harvest at different times, therefore less potential waste, less labor and less machinery is needed. So fertilizers, the second method that help to improve crop production. So common fertilizers such as nitrogen, potassium and phosphorus add onto the nutrients available in the soil. Now types of fertilizers, the advantages and disadvantages. So we have organic fertilizers, use natural resources and supplies organic matter. That's the advantages. And disadvantages is usually unpleasant to handle, is harder to transport and variable in composition. While inorganic fertilizers, like the one you have in this diagram here, is inorganic, meet a particular need and is easier to store. Cost of manufacture, transportation cost, Then we have quick acting fertilizers. It has a deficiency problem are dealt with swiftly. If there's any form of mineral deficiency in the plant, it's usually dealt with swiftly with quick acting fertilizers, and easily leach out in heavy rain. Then we also have slow acting, no need to reapply, so little immediate impact for slow acting fertilizers. So irrigation um, simply means supplying water to the crop. That's what irrigation is. It has to do with supplying water to crop. Now, large percentage of plant is made up of water, so which is essential for cell activities, is used in photosynthesis, and mineral nutrient uptake requires water in the soil. So the water must be free from pollution and low in salt content. Now, the types of irrigation include overhead sprinklers, clay pot irrigation system, trickle drip system, and flood irrigation. So we are going to look at these types of irrigation before. So overhead sprinklers, advantage is easy to set up. So you can see it, most people use it in their gardens at home. So it's an overhead sprinkler to water plant and within the environment. Now it's easy to set up, covers it can cover a large area from one sprinkler. So one sprinkler can actually cover a large area. No need to attach pipes to each plant. That's the advantage. And it's usually easy to install. That's easy to set up. Now, disadvantage, large droplets may cap the soil. Small droplets may be blown away by wind. Water lands on leaf and soil, which usually can evaporate very quickly. Now, clay pot irrigation system. You see how it works. When you insert the clay pot into the soil, then you now have the clay pot usually have some perforation here, so the water can actually diffuse out from the clay pot into the soil, and the plants roots close to the clay pot will have enough water that will be used for their growth. So advantage is a simple technology, easy to check the amount of water left in the clay pot, so you can actually add more to it. It is highly efficient, so high efficiency. Disadvantage, only suitable for permanent plant and large labor cost, because you have to be filling the clay pot on a consistent basis manually sometimes, so it's quite expensive. Now, trickle drip system, so you can see how it works. When pipes are all connected to the plant, and the water normally drip out from the pipe to the root point of the plant, so there will be enough water for it to use. Now, advantage, water placed directly at the base of the plant, automated and controlled by computer, and water is used very efficiently. Now, disadvantage is that it's expensive to install and it's complex to maintain. Grit can block tubes, so water will not come out, and it's inflexible. That means cannot be moved easily. Now we also have flood irrigation. Advantage, this is just when you take the pipe and go to the farmland and turn on the water and just wet that and the parameters that need to be irrigated. It's quite inexpensive and can cover large areas quickly. Disadvantage is an inefficient use of water and damage the soil structure. So next method that is used to improve agricultural production is pest. So pest control, you use pesticide. Weed control, you use herbicides. And fungi control, you use fungicides. Now, pest is an animal that attack or feed upon a crop plant. While pesticide is used to control pest, weed killing chemicals are known as herbicides. While fungi are controlled using fungicides. Insect controlling chemicals are called insecticides. So you need to know this. So each of these pests, insects, fungi, and excess weed tend to affect the plant, so it reduces the crop yield. So these set of chemicals are used to control the pest, the weed, the fungi, and insect in order for crop production to increase. Now, they must be controlled because weed, this competes with crop for light and water and nutrient. Therefore, it reduces the quality of seed or grain crop. So it might be poisonous, make cultivation difficult, can block drainage system with excessive growth, can be a source of pests and diseases, and it can look untidy, which can have an impact on tourism areas. So you see, we need all these chemicals in order to avoid this set of issues. Next, advantages of herbicides. Herbicides are easy to manage. A alternative may be less effective. Alternative, like instead of using herbicide, decide to use a weeding process, can be less effective. It's quite cheaper. Results are more predictable. Results are more predictable. Less labor is needed. Effect is more rapid. While alternative to herbicides are cultural controls, hand weeding and hoeing, weed barriers, and flame guns. These are alternatives you can use to apply herbicide, which is quite more expensive than herbicide that are cheaper. Mechanization is another method that improves crop production. So large areas can be cultivated in mechanization. It reduces labor costs. Plowing can be done easily when soil is heavy. Additional attachment can be done to apply fertilizers and pesticides. So you cultivate large area, obviously there will be more food production. Now, selective breeding is another method, and this has to do with it follows a process. It has to do with human intervention, where you choose parents, that you choose the plant or animal that exhibits the desired characteristics of the species, raise the offspring from this parent. So you select the best offspring that shows the desired characteristics, and you repeat the process. Now, example are beef cattle, dairy cattle, wheat, and rice. Then drawback to selective breeding have to do with slow process. It's a slow process and it has less success rate. But once it's done and you're successful, you now have desired characteristics. You now cultivate things that have and things like rare animals that have more meat, more milk, and also for their wool. Now, genetically modified organisms. Now, GMO, genetically modified organisms, is when the DNA of an organism is inserted into another DNA, when you alter the genetic makeup of an organism. Now, advantages and disadvantages. So the advantages include disease and pest resistance may increase, nutritional value may increase, crop can be grown in inhospitable area like desert, insect resistance may increase, and crop with longer storage lives also. So you see, the advantages, you now have things like pest resistant crop, herbicide resistant crop. Crops can be grown in the desert or with low water condition. So these are the various advantages. It can be also pleasant to the eye. It has more nutritional value. But the disadvantages, it has an unknown impact on human health. Products are not natural. Genes might get into wild plants if they interbreed with genetically modified organisms, reducing biodiversity in that instance. So reduction in the gene pool also is an impact of genetically modified crops. Now, we also have controlled environment. Controlled environment like the greenhouse and hydroponics. Now, in greenhouse is used to manage the environment for plant growth. Greenhouse is used to manage environment for plant growth, and the factors that affect plant growth include temperature, light, humidity, and day length, and water. So in this case, how to increase temperature? You operate a heating system, example are insulation, and how to decrease the temperature within the greenhouse. You open roof and ventilators for the temperature to reduce. Then light, supplementary lighting will help to increase light intensity. Now how to decrease it? Shading Shading materials in the roof help to decrease it also. Humidity, misting unit, open roof ventilators to reduce it. Daylight, supplementary lighting. How to decrease it? Shading materials and curtains help to reduce daylight. While water has to do with sprinkler, use sprinkler, which is a method of irrigation. How to decrease it? Drainage materials is usually underneath and these plants to decrease them. So hydroponics, so you can see it from the diagram, is growing plants in the absence of soil. So when you grow plants in the absence of soil, that process is termed hydroponics. Now it has advantages and disadvantages. Advantage is that there is no need for soil and can be used anywhere. It's easy to harvest. Exact nutrients needed are provided. Water is usually recycled in this process, and pollutants are not released into the environment. However, the disadvantage is that it's expensive to set up and it's usually suitable for small production area. Technical knowledge is required in this process, and disease, if present, may spread rapidly. Plant can die quickly if conditions are not maintained. So, impact of agriculture, the impact of agricultural practice on the environment and people. So what is the impact of this agricultural system we've been explaining? Now, most of the impact of agriculture include overuse of insecticide and herbicide, overuse of fertilizers, mismanagement of irrigation causing salinization and waterlogging, overproduction of and waste, exhaustion of mineral ion content, soil erosion, and cash crop replacing food crops. So let's look at them individually, then we'll finish this part too. Now, overuse of herbicide and insecticide. Regular use of one insecticide. Take note, regular use of one insecticide can cause resistance within the pest population. Solution, you should use a different range of pesticide. Now, unintended environmental damage, such as beneficial insects like bees, are often affected and the food web is disturbed when you use insecticide, you kill them. Now, you can also have spray drift, where herbicide stay longer in the soil and may affect the next crop that is being cultivated there. Now, heavy rainfall can cause leaching of the chemicals into nearby lakes. Now, overuse of fertilizers, where you have additional of extra mineral nutrient, is waste of money and resources if the soil has reached its maximum level. So heavy rain can dissolve the nutrient and cause leaching. Now, excess water containing dissolved fertilizers drain into nearby lakes and rivers, therefore leading to eutrophication. Now, nitrates from fertilizers, if consumed, can cause disease such as blue baby syndrome. Large quantities can affect the pH of the soil and in turn the availability of minerals. Now, too much of trace element can be toxic to the plant. Now, too much fertilizers dehydrate the plant. An imbalance of nutrients makes the plant produce lots of foliage but not flower. Solution: strict limit on where, when, and how fertilizers must be applied. Can replace, you should be able to replace fertilizers with inorganic fertilizers with organic fertilizers. Now, process of eutrophication, because it's an impact of fertilizers. One is nutrient load up. Now, excessive nutrient from fertilizers are flushed from the land into rivers and lake. First, it flushed from land into rivers and lake. Plants will now flourish. These pollutants cause aquatic plant growth of algae. So things like duckweed and other plants we grow excessively. That's true. So algae bloom, oxygen will lead to oxygen in the water will be depleted. Algae bloom prevents sunlight reaching other plants. The plants die and oxygen in the water is depleted. Decomposition further depletes oxygen. So dead plants are broken down by bacteria, decomposers, using up even more oxygen in the water. So death of this death of the ecosystem, oxygen level reach a point where no life is possible. Fish and other organisms will not die. This is the process of eutrophication. In case you are asked, it comes out at times as a 6-mark question, and I expect you to be able to answer it. Now, mismanagement of irrigation causing salinization and waterlogging in the soil. Now, when you damage irrigation, normally leads to damage of soil structure. It can make the soil to be compacted. Now, death of plant roots as waterlogged soil prevent plant roots from getting enough oxygen. Loss of nutrient as they are dissolved and washed away with water, and high level of runoff, therefore soil erosion. So things like soil capping can occur where the surface of the soil become very hard because of irrigation. Now, salinization, where the salt content of the soil can increase because of irrigation. So irrigation water soak into the soil to a great depth. So salt dissolve in water at a great depth. So water evaporates from the field, water and salt are drawn up to the surface, and salt remain at the surface and kill plant roots. So you can prevent soil cultivation as it's difficult to cultivate soil with a high water content. So soil with high water content is actually difficult to cultivate. So excess irrigation normally lead to these issues. Now, overproduction of waste. Waste from overproduction, the unsold proportion of the crop, waste of storage space may take longer to sell a crop, so some crop needs special conditions to store. Waste of transportation, to sell a crop a farmer may need to travel longer distance. Waste of quality products, low quality means less demand. And waste of labor, not an efficient use of time and labor if too much is produced. So overproduction and waste. So these are all impact of agriculture. Now, exhaustion of mineral iron content. Now, the farmer use the soil over and over again with little or no rest, which leave the soil depleted of nutrient and mineral. So solution, you should have a crop rotation, mix cropping, and also you uh, leave the land to fallow for a year or so in order to replenish the nutrient. Now, soil erosion uh, is also a problem. Sorry, let me go back. Soil erosion is still a problem. So overcultivation. Soil that are cultivated regularly lose their soil structure and are more vulnerable to erosion as they break down to smaller particles. So cash crop replacing food crop is also a problem, where most commercial farmers prefer to grow crops that generate more cash. This causes a decline in staple food available. Now, reasons why some regions uses more insecticide than others. This is actually a past question, so let's look at it. Reasons why some regions uses more insecticide than others. It has to do with wealth. Some regions cannot afford it. Now, lack of availability of insecticide in some regions can lead to reasons why some regions use it more than others. Other biological controls used in some regions. Some regions don't use insecticide; they use other means of insect control. Greater use on more vulnerable crops, where intensive production, value of agriculture to economy, more use if more crops. Now, some regions naturally is less affected by pests due to climate. Then another is lack of legislative laws to control the application and use of these insecticides. So in part 3, we are going to be looking at causes and impact of soil erosion, managing soil erosion, and sustainable agriculture. So please, need you to subscribe to get constant